I'm going to ask Mick Boles just to respond to that, but also tell us why the coalition is going to win in 2015.
Wow. I'd just like to explain to everybody that I was given precisely an hour's notice of this event. So my comments are not prepared. I also just want to put on record that I will be voting for Vince Cable's reforms on Thursday. I suspect that many of you won't approve of that decision, but I thought I should put that on record too. I think, as ever, and I've sat in on a number of these presentations by Ben over the years, they're always fascinating and stimulating and make you ask questions. The first thing I just wanted to pick up on was on some of the research into the big society. I think that in your presentation, Ben, in common with, and it's our fault, nobody else's, but in common with a lot of the public comment, there is this overwhelming emphasis on volunteering, as if somehow that's all that we mean by this term, the big society. Now, that's not to underestimate the importance of volunteering. Without volunteering, a huge number of things that we find very, very important in life wouldn't happen, and we're going to need more of it. So it is an important element, but it is absolutely not the main element. And so I'd just very briefly like to give you a sense of what we at least think is the main element. The first of which is the schools programme, the academies programme, the free schools programme, because a healthy and strong society is made up of healthy, strong, independent institutions. Institutions are vital. And so what we want is good institutions growing, taking over failing institutions, doing so without being told by the state to do it. We want universities to set up academies, universities to set up teaching schools. That is as much a part of a big society as somebody volunteering to do Meals on Wheels or to do some vital local social service. Another example, we're going to be taking through Parliament in its first stage next week the introduction of police commissioners. These people who will be directly elected in local areas and will replace police authorities in order to try and make the police, who have been for years, I think, rather immune from bottom-up accountability, more accountable to the actual people in the communities they serve. And again, that is absolutely right at the heart of the big society. It's not going to be that there are, hundreds of thousands of volunteers who are going to be turning up to make suggestions to the police, or that somehow we're going to have much more busy neighbourhood watch schemes. What it is simply that we're going to have, again, an institution, the police commissioner, that is locally elected, that actually says to the police, here, what my people are worried about is this. I don't care what the Home Office is saying. I don't care what Her Majesty's Inspectorate is saying. What my people are worried about is this. Focus on this. And that is as much part of the big society too. So when we judge it, and when we judge whether it's happening, and whether people are actually embracing it, don't just look at questions of volunteering, look at questions of how many of these new schools are happening, how many other institutions are getting involved, how are these police commissioners working, across the range, are there organisations that are not part of the state that are getting involved in delivering what we all think of, and will continue to think of, as public services, because public services do not necessarily mean state services, and that's the point of the big society. So that's my sort of biggest substantive point. Just on the popularity or otherwise of the government. I think, Ben, you're absolutely right. David Cameron's absolutely right. Nothing has happened yet. Actually, not quite true. Things are just beginning to happen, mostly in local government, because good local authorities have been anticipating what's coming down the pike and have started making some difficult decisions, and that has started cutting certain programmes, cutting certain grants, unfortunately, and cutting some jobs. So that's the first little bit of reality. But compared to what's about to come, we've seen, 1% of the impact of all of the decisions that were in theory made. And while people in this room might follow what was in the spending review, most people have no real idea what was in the spending review other than the broad shape of it, the broad speed of it, the broad argument of it. And it is only when institutions that you depend on are closed or the hours are reduced, people lose their jobs. That is when you will get people beginning to form a view about things. And we will become miserably unpopular. And I fear that there is among some of my colleagues a bit of a delusion that somehow, because we seem to have avoided it so far, and because Ed Miliband seems to be a complete waste of space, that we're not going to become miserably unpopular. You don't have to have a genuinely popular opposition to become unpopular. You can become unpopular in a vacuum, and we will. whether Ed Miliband shapes up or not. We will become miserably unpopular. And then the question is, what happens then? Do we hold the course or do we not? And we, of course, is a more complicated term in this government than in previous governments because it combines two parties and many different elements. That is going to be the question. It's the question that Margaret Thatcher did basically answer satisfactorily all of those times, but as you say, with a bit of help from events. And the question is, will we do it? And I think that I'm confident, I'm hopeful that we will, and that by the time of the next election, and that's why we're trying to do this in 5 years, by the way, by the time of the next election, people will see, God, that was hell. That was a bit of a nightmare. I don't really like these people, but I have to admit they were probably right to do what they did. That's what we're after. And the trouble of doing it over 10 years is that you get to 5 years and you say to them, by the way, everything that you've been doing for the last 5 years, just 5 more years to go. It's just not reality, that. That's not how people think in their lives. They want to, if they're going to have to go through dark times, they want to know that there's going to be a stage and that they'll get out of it. So that's what we're relying on in 2015, is that we'll be out that other side. I have a personal little extra help that I would like in 2015, and that is that we continue the coalition, that we go into that election with an electoral pact which says that the coalition will put up one candidate in each constituency. It's a personal hobby horse of mine. Some people agree with me privately, not many people agree with me publicly, but what I'll say is watch this space, because I think that both parties will realise that it's strongly in their interest to do this as we start getting into that deep unpopularity that is inevitable. Thank you.